Good morning, everybody. This is Jim Feist in Las Vegas, joined by Hank Goldberg from sunny South Florida. Two amazingly interesting games yesterday in the NFL. What a surprise. Everybody already knows it. It's not news to anyone. I feel sorry for the kid that didn't make the tackle. He's going to have to live that one down. I don't know if he ever will. Of course, then Hank, your favorite team, favorite player, Big Ben, he threw the ball all over the place. You'd never imagine that a guy that could throw that many touchdown passes with that many yards at home with supposedly a good defense against a team that doesn't ever score much. And they doubled the closing total. Closing total on that game, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville was about 40 and a half. And they doubled the total. Each team went over the closing total. It's absolutely amazing. In my opinion, Tomlin is one of the worst coaches I've ever seen. I don't know what he's doing ever.
They weren't ready to play that game. They came out fat-faced, throws that ridiculous interception on an early series. They were down 14 points before you could turn around against a team that has a quarterback who put up 7 points the week before. They never made a defensive adjustment. On third downs, that guy was killing them with the same play every time. They were the worst coached, worst prepared team imaginable, which was typical of Pittsburgh all year. Playing down to the competition. And, Fat-Face killed them early, put them down 2 scores. Here's what happens when you go up against a team like that who has a good defense and, he throws that pick early. They're down 3 touchdowns before you can turn around. And then they go to a soft defense. And they had useless scores the rest of the way. Those 5 touchdowns he put up didn't mean crap. And they lost. That's why they lost.
In your opinion, how do you rank Tomlin's decision making?
It was horrible. You know something? They had a chance to win that game. They were killing them. They killed them in the second half because they had a chance to catch up with them, and then he goes for the onside kick. There was 3.5 minutes left in the game, and Jacksonville wasn't doing anything offensively. Pittsburgh had been shutting him down, and instead he gives them the ball at midfield. And you don't kick onside in that situation. You put them in bad field position, and you take the chances on stopping them and getting the ball back, and then you tie the game. And believe me, if they had tied that game, they would have won it.
The other factor that I've only heard one person talk about, the other reason you couldn't kick onside, there's many reasons, but the one reason nobody talks about, they're down 7. If you make it a 2-scored game at that point, it's almost impossible to win it. And by kicking onside at that position, you're basically saying, we have to keep this team from getting 20 yards because you put them in field goal position, and now we're down 10 and have to make that up. You absolutely had to kick that ball deep. I don't know how, and that ranks at the top of one of the most stupid decisions I've ever seen.
Well, Dan Fouts was all over him for that. He did exactly what you just said.
It's unbelievable. We have the 4 quarterbacks in the finals. Case Keenum, who's played great all year. Blake Bortles, who's absolutely not looked good most of the time, but yesterday looked amazing. And Nick Foles, who's been, not playing at all until the last couple of weeks. And Tom Brady. You talk about playing quarterbacks. You have people that nobody would have ever been able to pick these four teams, four quarterbacks, as being in the finals at the start of the season. It's absolutely been an amazing, amazing ride for these three guys. Congratulations to them for being there. Wow. That's all I can say is wow.
I'll tell you something interesting. There's a couch service out there that has employs 30 handicappers that we both work for. 28 out of the 30 handicappers picked the Eagles. I had thought that the Sharps had been all over the Eagles, but that's not what happened. Because all the guys on television, the only guys who picked the Eagles were us and the old receiver from Minnesota, who should be in the Hall of Fame this year. But anyway, Randy Moss. But what happened was Vegas took a bath on that game. They really needed the other side. So, because all the money on that game was on
Atlanta.
Was on Atlanta. So nobody paid any attention to the fact that all these so-called smart guys on that one service, 28 out of 30 handicappers there, and they have a lot of good people there, had picked the Eagles.
Yeah,
it was very surprising to me. And so I talked to a friend of mine out there and said, how did you guys do? Did all the Sharps come in on the Eagles? He said, absolutely not. We really needed the Eagles. And so the sports books out there made a huge score on that game.
Yeah, I mean, I know what site you're talking about, and they do a great job. And you know, you and I had the Eagles, and you know, it just, if you really look at it, we talked about it. Was there really a 10-point adjustment justified from going from Wentz to Foles? When you consider that the Eagles were one of the either top 1, 2, or 3 teams in football all year long, and it's not just about the quarterback. There are other factors to a football team than the quarterback. Offensive line, defensive backs, corners, safeties, running backs, etc., coaching decisions, etc. All these things matter. And then when you look at the other side, Atlanta did not have a great year. Yes, they won a lot of games at the end. Yes, they had quality players, but they had quality players all year, and they didn't live up to expectations as they had the year before, where they exceeded expectations. So the question was, if a team's supposed to be 7-point favorite with Carson Wentz, and they then become a 3-point underdog with Nick Foles, is that a justifiable move or adjustment? And none of us in the business could change our opinion or power ratings to that level. But the public justified it. Because every time that darn game went down to 2.5, it went back up to 3. Every time, so it was like a battle between two groups. And of course, Philly played their butt off, and Foles played very well. No, he's not Carson Wentz. He will never be Carson Wentz. But he's an NFL quarterback that had one exceptional year under Chip Kelly, but very marginal years after that. And, if you talk about the eyeball test, the previous 2 weeks that he played, he looked awful. But then, of course, you give him 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to come up with a game plan that he can handle, and he looked pretty damn good. And of course, Atlanta played pretty much like they had all year. Their red zone, you've been talking about it for months, that they were terrible in the red zone, and that killed them yesterday.
Killed them.
Yeah.
They got in the red zone early in the game and had to settle for a field goal. They could not score in the red zone, and the key is that they had a top receiver who was got all kinds of useless yardage all year long and only scored 4 touchdowns. That was it. 3 in the regular season and 1 against the Rams. When the Rams kept giving them the ball in great field position because their specials were so bad. By the way, one more point I want to make about New Orleans. They made a great hire midway through the season. They hired Mike Westhoff, who's in his 60s now, who's a special teams guru, and he came through for New Orleans again. And they blocked a punt that helped them get back into the game in the second half. When they were down 13 or 17-7, they blocked the kick. Westhoff is just the best, always has been. I know Mike a long time. He was with Don Shula for years. Then he went to the Jets, and Mike always almost brought him through again.
Yeah, it was a hell of a game. Down 17-0. The Saints played very well. Drew Brees is always Drew Brees. He's just a great quarterback.
Well, he played a hell of a game.
He did.
I feel really bad for him, but not that bad because I keeps Minnesota alive for me.
And you got him 16-1 to win it all, right?
Yep.
You know, it's a shame that Williams gets all the bad, he hit the bad mojo for what happened yesterday with that missed tackle. Football people will say he was trying to keep the kid in bounds. You knew he'd run out the clock if you do that, which is actually the right thing to do. But he
was in the right position.
He just launched too early and didn't. Who knows what was in his head? It's a reaction moment. He's a good player, and he's going to be a good player for a long time. He made a mistake, and we all make mistakes.
Hey, he had an interception in the game that could have been a game changer.
I don't think people should be so hard on him. I know they will be, but that's the way it is these days. But he just made a mistake. We all make mistakes, and the Saints played a hell of a game, and rightfully so. They should have won the game, but Minnesota.
They had the game won.
They had the game won. Minnesota played a great game too. They faltered quite a bit in the second half. After they got that 17-0 lead, they basically, they just couldn't get anything done. I will say
they had two plays that allowed the Saints to get back into the game. One was the interception that Keenum threw. That was one, and the other was the blocked punt.
There's one facet though that bothered me about it. Hank, Keenum was under pressure, tremendous pressure. Their offensive line did not give him enough time to throw the ball, and
they were playing against the best defense in the league, and that's going to show up again next week. Minnesota's defense is great. They got tremendous pass rush. They've got and by the way, at one stage in the game when the Saints came back, their cornerback was in the tent getting checked over. He came back late in the game, but Minnesota's defense is as good as there is in the league right now.
I agree with that, but I think you missed what I was trying to say. There is Case Keenum had no time to throw the ball. Their offensive line did not give him time. In the second half, he was constantly under pressure. And that bothers me going forward because Philadelphia is pretty tough.
Yep.
And they got a great front seven. And I was shocked at how little time he had to throw. And in the second half, I know they made mistakes, but in the second half, they were not able to move the ball very much because of that pressure that Keenum was under.
Well, they had two critical errors that got New Orleans back in the game. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been close. And those were the turnovers where on that, he threw that one bad interception that resulted in the score. And again, they had the blocked punt that gave New Orleans the ball right after it. Hey, New Orleans, had the 7-minute drive at the end of the third quarter. And I was thinking that was a very time-consuming drive that brought them to within 10 points. And then they get the ball right back on the blocked punt. And now it's 17-14 and it's a ball game. So that game really turned on those two plays.
I might as well look a little bit before we run out of time at the opening lines and if there's any line movement going forward. Jacksonville in the early game next Sunday is at New England. Blake Bortles played the best game I've ever seen him play to get there. Of course, Tom Brady in New England did what Tom Brady in New England do. And New England opened 9.5, 46.5. And it is mostly the same. However, there's been some adjustments here and there at some books down to 9. There's some people coming in and took the 9.5 on that game. And the other game, which is the later game, Minnesota is at Philadelphia. Minnesota opened 3.5 and 38, and pretty much it has not moved. 3.5 and 38 is the number there. I haven't seen any real activity so far, but it's only Monday morning, so it should be. And then of course, it is Monday morning, and these games are on Sunday, so there's no sense talking about weather yet. But we do know both these cities, these home cities, they're outdoor games, and we do have to really stay on top of the weather because you could get some nasty, windy, cold, rainy, icy days in both these cities. You just have to keep on top of it every day, check the weather every day. I will do that, and so will Hank going forward. Hank, college hoops, that's the...
Yeah, by the way, Stations opened the New England game 8.5, and it went to 9 right away. And then I guess it went to 9.5 and then came back down. Yeah, there's some college hoops today. Duke is playing at Miami. They're in town here. They're a 3-point favorite. Duke doesn't play real good defense. There's a lot of scoring whenever they play, but defensively they're a little bit of a liability right now. The Southern Cal is playing very well. They had a big win last night. My St. Peter's team got beat yesterday, but Canisius came up with a win. There's a lot of NBA. I think the big game to watch today is going to be Golden State against Cleveland. Because Cleveland's really in a funk right now, and Golden State's got Curry back, and they're playing very well. And by the way, the Lakers have won 4 straight games, but they may be about to fire their coach. So we'll see what happens there. That's a situation to keep an eye on. But I think a lot of people are going to be watching that Golden State game tonight to see if Cleveland can put it together. They're in a real funk right now. Everybody's been beating Cleveland, and it's interesting to see what's wrong there. And apparently they're fighting among themselves now, and it's not a good situation. I just think Cleveland's vulnerable.
Well, you look at the offseason, Kyrie Irving wants out. He leaves. They bring in IT. He's hurt. They couldn't start him. Only recently did he start playing. And then you have the contract with LeBron, and you don't know if he's going to stay or go, and if he goes, where he's going. So I think that there's a lot of disruption there in Cleveland, and the Golden State's at a different level than everybody else. I'm not surprised that anything that goes on there. You know, the game that we haven't discussed in college hoops, and I think everybody's going to. It's first of all, it's interesting to look at this. What's going on here? Kansas visits number 2 ranked West Virginia. West Virginia.
Yeah, West Virginia's good.
West Virginia's
and,
good.
West Virginia, they can play defense too. And Kansas is just Kansas is not that great this year.
Well,
So,
if West Virginia turned, I mean, it's, you know, they call it press Virginia because they press all over the court, and if they turn you over, you're done. But they do give up a lot of foul shots. I think it's 21 foul shots, 21 fouls per game, which is a lot. But that's because they play that type of defense. This game opened, Hank, 3.5, and it's up to 6.5. That's a big move against a Kansas team. And when that kind of move takes place this early in the day, that's not fans, that's sharps, because the fans don't get into these games that early in the day. And this is a 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Western game, Pacific Coast game. That's a large move. A 3-point move like that from the opener against a top 12 ranked team, that's a big move. I would be afraid to be taking the dog there. There's a lot of big money coming in on West Virginia.
Yeah, I think you're looking at a tight defensive game. I'm not sure I would get involved otherwise.
All right, Hank. Hank's plays. And, oh, by the way, Hank, let's not forget what you did over the weekend in the horses.
Yeah, we had a nice $48 exacta and one of the big stakes races in California, and we also hit the stakes race in the Jerome. It didn't pay quite as much, but it paid around $33, which isn't bad. So we had another good stakes day, and I don't know who won the race in New Orleans. I didn't see the results. Because TVG didn't have the race on. But that was the first big 3-year-old race at the fairgrounds. I'll have to take a look at how that came out.
Well, Hank has horses up every weekend, and there's nobody better than Hank in horses, and the sports have been awesome. Go to jimfeist.com, pick up Hank's plays, my plays, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again in a couple of days. Thanks, Hank.
Okay. Be an interesting week.
It sure will.